You are now listening to Operator.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. This is Kems Kriol with the Early Current edition number 20. And this is the show where we play contemporary, neoclassical, ambient, electroacoustics, amongst other experimental genres. And today I have a very special guest in the studio. It's my first time we will have a live performance and an interview with artist, composer, poet, and movement specialist Dorota. But first off, we're gonna start the first half hour with compositions. And the first composition we're gonna listen to is by Rutger Hoedemakers, and the title is A Very Real Place. So here's Rutger Hoedemakers. Rutger Hoedemakers, and the composition a very real place, which is on the original soundtrack for the movie Shangri-La, Paradise Under Construction. The soundtrack was released on April 21st of last year, and the musicians that also played on this album are Margaret Hermant on harp, Tomasz Duda on flute, clarinet, and bass clarinet, Ramon Loormans on marimba and vibraphone, Nicky Hastings on percussion, and Rutger Hoedemakers himself played the piano. The orchestra we listen to is the Budapest Art Orchestra, and the conductor is Artur Grosz. Hoedemakers started out with the Commodore Amiga 500 on Pro Tracker when he was 12, and he eventually became a part of the emerging demo scene, sort of a hacker light kind of subculture, which would meet at different gatherings all over Europe. They would hold these competitions for coding, graphics, and music, and he participated a few times and even won the music category once or twice. I quote, "It was really fun and an interesting way to be introduced to music production," end quote. Hoedemakers also played keyboards for bands voiced alongside Colin Benders on trumpet, who now is known as a modular synth wizard, as well as writing music for Lucky Fonz III. About his solo indie electro pop band who first released About was his solo indie electro pop band, and he first released on Cock Rock disco label from Jason Forrest, which is a label that predominantly releases breakcore and other uptempo electronic genres. And he made the transition in search of more melody and rhythmic challenge to become the composer he is now. And as we were listening to Shangri-La, A Paradise Under Construction, it is an imaginary or real-life paradise. And in this is essayistic travelogue, Meerkaduin, who is the director of the movie, explores the history of the image of Shangri-La, the famous imaginary paradise from James Hilton's novel Lost Horizon. 2 decades ago, a Tibetan region in China, Deccan, claimed it was the original Shangri-La of legend. This rich and complex story follows Mirka's quest to find answers, only resulting in an entanglement of facts and fictions, truths and lies. So it's up to the people who saw it to see whether it's truth or a lie. That was Rutger Hoedemakers. Next up, it's Laurie Goldston, and the composition is called Several Ballads All at Once. Laurie Goldston, not Larry. And the composition is called Several Ballads All at Once from the album Convolutions, which was released on June 21st of this year on Naya Records in Leitrim, Ireland. In 2022, Laurie Goldston went on a small 4-day tour of Ireland, playing in Cork, Limerick, and Leitrim, and Drogheda. Willie Stewart of Naya Records drove her on the tour and recorded each performance. In these recordings, you can hear how Laurie's playing is influenced by each space and its atmosphere. This set of improvisations is an ear-opening journey into the cello and Laurie's intimate relationship to it. Classically trained and rigorously detrained, possessor of a restless, semi-feral spirit, Laurie Goldston is a cellist, composer, improviser, producer, writer, and teacher from Seattle. Her voice as a cellist, amplified or acoustic, is full, textured, committed, and original. A relentless inquirer, her work drifts freely across borders that separate genre, discipline, time, and geography. She has toured, played, and recorded with greats like Nirvana, Earth, Mira, Jessica Kenny, Ilan Volkov, David Byrne, and Terry Riley, among a lot of other artists. Laurie Goldston. Next up is the first and last part of the first part of this show, and then we will continue on with Dorota Matejova. Am I saying it correctly? Yes, Matejova. So here's KMRU or Kamaru with Nature or Nature Extract. KMRU or Kamaru released Nature. This extract of the album, which is also entitled Nature, was released on July 26th of this year on Touch Music or Fairwood Music in London, UK. And Kamaru, which is a derival of Joseph Kamaru, is a sound artist and experimental ambient musician. He was raised in Nairobi, Kenya, and currently based in Berlin, where he's a master's student in sound studies and sonic arts at the Universität der Künste. He also has a degree in music technology from the Kenyatta University, and his works deal with discourses of field recording, improvisation, noise, ambient, machine learning, radio art, and expansive hypnotic drones. He has earned international acclaim for his performances in a far-flung locals, as well as his ambient recordings, including the 2020 album Peel, released on Editions Mego. Kamaru was born into a household rooted in music. The late Kenyan musician and namesake Joseph Kamaru is his grandfather. Over a career spanning 6 decades, Kamaru Sr. defined himself as the voice of the people with a unique brand of politically conscious guitar music. I quote, "My grandfather was a close friend and I learned a lot about the environment, life and music from him." End quote. Armed with his Zoom H6, iPhone and binaural Soundman microphone, he examines the land and subject matter like an oral cartographer. About his latest release, Nature, the following is mentioned in the liner notes. After 6 p.m., when the sun sets, even the dim glow of a screen can dazzle the eyes, which must quickly adapt to the conditions. And as anyone who's closed their eyes while listening to music will know, the ears also adjust when visibility is impaired, enhancing even the tiniest sounds. So, Kamaru used his phenomenon to inform Nature, a billowing, long-form narrative that blurs the audible spectrum with an imperceptible sonic universe contrasting cacophonous electromagnetic soundscapes with more familiar and grounding natural sounds. The piece was composed in 2022, and since then Kamaru has made it a live staple, tweaking and reshaping it as he performed on tour with Finesse and with the London Contemporary Orchestra at South Bank Centre. I quote, "I became it. I emerged with it on a performance level." End quote. The experience allowed Kamaru to sculpt not only the album's crucial dynamics but its philosophy. Following up records like 2020's acclaimed field recording Rooted Peel and last year's synthetic ethereal Disillusion Grip, Kamaru makes a decisive step forward. Nature is Kamaru's most uncompromising work to date, crackling to life from dense clouds of static and intimidating dissonant drones. Using electromagnetic microphones, he uncloaks the commotion hidden by the digital era's ambiguous stillness, juxtaposing roaring mechanical growls with microscopic glitches and tranquil electrical wails. When environmental recordings do appear, they're used as transitions between the thickets of harsh noise, sometimes hard to identify. They subconsciously remind the listener that behind the wall of sound there's a natural world in constant communication, continually adapting to the fluctuating ecosystem. If you wish to see Kamaru live, he will be performing here in the Netherlands at Le Guess Who Festival on November 7th in Tivoli, Utrecht. And this was the first part of the early current, and now we're gonna continue the second part with my lovely guest, Dorota Mateova. Am I saying it? Yeah, Mateova? Yes. First, Dorota, tell us, who you are. Of course, you're Dorota Mateova, but where you were born and what age you started playing the traverso.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
I was born actually in The Hague in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in Slovakia. in Bratislava. And then I came to the Netherlands to study when I was 21 or 22. And I started to play the traverso at the age around 19. But before I was playing other flutes. I started with music when I was 6 with the recorder. That's the blokfluit in Dutch, I think.
Yeah, blokfluit, yeah.
And then after I played it until around 11 or 12, and then I went to modern flute, like this, the dwarsfluit in Dutch. And actually, when I was 16, I decided to study music, like fully. And then when I was 19, I met the traverso a bit by accident, but it was my lucky accident. And then I actually decided to fully go for this instrument. So I kind of gave up playing the modern flute on, let's say, this really high professional level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was 19.
Yeah, and always playing classical music, of course. Studying classical music mostly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in the context of classical music.
And were you playing in orchestras or small? Because there's always like conditions in where you have to adapt. Like, were you playing with big orchestras, smaller ensembles and stuff already at that age?
Yes, I was never really interested to be an orchestra player.
No.
It was never my thing. I like to listen to orchestra, but I never was really into that. So I was mostly playing chamber music, so with really small groups, and I always enjoy to play with people that I have a musical connection with. So yeah, that was much more my thing.
Nice. And tell us more about the how you discovered the traverso. How was this? When did this happen? And how was this encounter? Where did the love and the relationship with the instrument? First of all, explain to us what a traverso is.
Traverso, so it is a flute that's transverse. So it's played to
sideways.
Yeah. It is an instrument that is actually originally from the 18th century. It's the construction is quite simple. I would say even very primitive. So it's a wooden tube with seven holes, and it's wooden. Yeah, I said that. And usually it's used. It's studied within an early music context, which means that it's a study of music of the past, but on original instruments. So the instrument I have, it's because the wind instruments with time, especially because it's wooden, they get they deteriorate in quality. Unlike the string instruments, which actually with time, when
they
it's
become better.
When it's an instrument that is really well
like
built.
the stories of the Stradivaris, like the 200, 300 years old violins, etc., etc.
So the instrument I have is a copy of the instrument from the beginning of 18th century.
And early music. Tell us more about the genre. Can I compare it to Baroque now?
Yeah, it's actually Baroque.
It's Baroque, right?
It depends really the instrument you play, but let's say the
compositions.
The compositions, but also the time when a lot of flute music was written was really 18th century. Which is also a little bit, problematic. I don't know in some ways, but so actually it's a study of this repertoire on an original instrument, the study of early music.
So because your bio says she specializes in performing new music on early instruments. So early, you mean music from the early classical era, and then new music as in modern compositions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, modern and specifically, well, new music is also kind of a broad term, but what I mean is really the music of the contemporary music. So let's say I count the music from around 1980s up until today.
Okay.
So that's something that's really not. It's not so
Common.
It's not common.
No,
for
it's not so
early
common.
instruments.
Yeah. You also implement movement to your performances.
Yes.
When did you start to do this, and which dance companies have helped shape you? Because I did some research on how you did this. Actually, I also saw this. So the first time because of course I always do a little bit of research on people I interview. I saw that you were doing movement performance alongside poetry. Poetry. But first, tell us more about the movement, implementation of the movement. When did you start to do this, and how did you? How was this process of growth into implementing these?
So, I'm not sure when exactly it started, but I was always interested.
Yeah.
Thank you. Always interested in movement and kind of pulled towards it, but for a long time, I didn't. I took it as something separate. That okay, I was a musician, and then I was doing movement and taking some dance classes. But when I came to the Netherlands, I met a teacher or a person, and she's a part of MAPA, which is the Moving Academy for Performing Arts, which is actually kind of an education platform, but for to make theater, physical theater, or music theater, and they work a lot with movement. And I studied, or I was training a lot of approach that's called musicality of movement, which is a movement, but not in a sense of dance, but exploring the movement through music or musical terms or musical approach.
Yeah, not so much as a choreography, to put it like this.
So it's much more about being exploring your own movement, your own movement language, and being
your own voice, you could say.
Yeah.
Okay.
And being in tune with your own body.
And when was this? When did you start to do this?
I think it was for sure 10 years ago, or a bit more even.
Yeah. So MAPA, and I also saw you did something with Amenti. So you were always refreshing your.
Yeah, and it's exactly with Amenti, for example. I went to some workshops also to expand and just explore my own movement language in different contexts.
Nice. Nice. And when I assisted the performance you did at Het Archief here in Rotterdam, I saw that you were moving within the space and exhibition. So not too much, because we were talking about more movement to music, but as in walking through the space and being one. Do you see the space as something to explore every time you do a performance, or was this a one-off when I saw this performance? Because I just saw one performance, and the other ones were more like images I saw online. So was this specially a part of that performance at Archief?
Yes, like this specific performance, it was really about the space and about relating to the current exhibition, Archipelago.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I call it a site-specific performance.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the context and on the space if I use the space. So if I would be playing, let's say, a classical concert, maybe I use it differently. But to be honest with you, I just like to use it more and more, and to kind of deconstruct this idea that the performer or musician has to be
static, on stage
or on stage. We're not gods or something, that I really like to just actually use the space more and more in my work.
Yeah, coming back to the, because we were, before the show started, we were talking about the poetry, and I mentioned Mira Kundera, and of course tradition of poetry, which every country has, probably. You also have this practice of writing your own poetry, which I read on your website. Tell us more about this. How did this? Did you always write small ideas, and how has this grown into a part of Dorota Mateova?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think I always liked writing, and I like language. I actually, when I was a kid, I think I wanted to be a Slovak language teacher. But the poetry started really spontaneously. I started to write. I remember when I was, teenager, and it slowly grew, and I was really writing just for myself. Yeah. Really, it was not about like, I want to publish or anything. Yeah. It was
make a recital of your poetry.
I never really wanted it, but it somehow happened that at this point I use poetry also sometimes in my performances.
Yeah, because I know in a lot of cultures, even where my parents are from, you are taught to recite poetry.
Oh, I did that a lot.
Yeah. Okay, you have to know those poems out of, and you have to be able to tell them to, not read them off a piece of paper. We really know how to recite those. I don't know if you have the same kind of tradition.
Yes, we did a lot in elementary school.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about poetry is that it's really music. I mean, for me as a musician, I feel it and as a music because it has rhythm, it has melody.
It does.
And I actually love also, you can listen a poem in a language that you don't understand, but you can feel it.
Yes.
So that's beautiful, I think.
So you've done a lot of performances in several forms, and you were saying before that you always preferred to do it in smaller packages, put it like this, smaller. And you've also lately I've seen a lot of your works being more alone or in a duo form. Am I correct?
Yes.
So is it that you consciously have started to strip your performances, or was it something that just eventually became?
It just happened, and it's the period of my life, I think, because when I'm solo, I also have really a lot of space to explore. But I actually love to play with other people. It's one of the most beautiful things in music, when you have a connection with someone and you are creating together.
True.
So I love to play chamber music, but it happened at this point that I do perform solo.
Yeah, because when you came to study this in the Netherlands, it was in The Hague that you studied?
It was in Amsterdam. I did my bachelor in Amsterdam.
Yeah, you did your bachelor, and after your bachelor, you started. Then, of course, you have your bachelor, and you're able to do choice of doing a master. So where you were like, okay, I'll just start exploring myself, and you started exploring movement and poetry. Was it something that happened naturally?
I went to actually study. I finished in my studies in The Hague.
Yeah.
And during that the master, I did my research on new music. Yeah. On actually exploring the sound of traverso beyond its traditional limit.
Yes.
And I think I was always pulled, because how I started to play traverso was actually not really because of the repertoire of the early music, but I really felt the connection, coming back to the first question, with the sound. I really like its sound.
The timbre of the instrument.
The timbre, and so actually then I started to research it through something that's not its home repertoire. And that's how I think I actually discovered that this is where I'm going, and I feel more passionate and connected with this kind of work than kind of continuing the tradition.
Yeah, the tradition of the people of playing traverso in a chamber or in traditional settings.
Or in the traditional repertoire.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love it, but it's not... I like to challenge it and just put it into a completely different context.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, I asked you to bring us or share with us a recording of something that was inspiring to you or something that you recorded yourself. Tell us more who the next composition is by and why you brought it to share it with us.
So I chose a piece by Milan Adamczyk. He's a Slovak composer, a visual artist, cellist, conceptual artist who wrote this piece that we are going to play. Actually, it's a graphic score. So he drew the score. It's called Configurazione dei due elementi. And it's the recording. It's with a duo I had with violin player Lucas Bernardo. So we recorded this piece as part of a project we had that's called Fantasias and Abstractions, and the ensemble is called Dolu Ensemble. And this project was about combining compositions for flute and violin, but the early compositions or Baroque compositions and new music compositions in one program to question, deconstruct, put the instruments in different context. So yes, I chose this composition because I think I really love to perform it, actually.
Nice. Okay, well, for now we're gonna listen to the recordings for now, and then afterwards we'll continue with the interview. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us, Dorota. Tell us quick where we can experience a performance by you anytime soon.
Actually, I have the next book performance is in December.
Mm-hmm.
In Brno and in Bratislava, but I regularly update my agenda on my webpage. So if you just look there, I put my performances there.
And it's online. You're Dorota Pupavi, right?
Yes, on Instagram, but my webpage is pupavi.com.
Okay, and Pupavi, why Pupavi? Quick, why?
Pupavi, it's really from the past. It actually means dandelions in Slovak language, and it's
cool. Yeah. Thank you. So we're gonna finish this early current with a performance by Dorota Matejova. I want to thank everyone for listening, and tell us quick the title of the composition you're gonna play for us.
I'm going to play Blossom and Shadow, a composition by Indonesian composer Wilson Levantono. This piece was written actually in last year. It was written for me. It's for solo traverso and voice, and it's part of my latest project, Dva domovy, Two Homes.
All right. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see one of your performances in this future soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I am blossom, and I am shadow. Living in one body, not balancing the sides, but rather letting them grow. Together. Intertwined. As I myself cherish both light and darkness, as one does not hold
Thank you. Right.